Okay, welcome back to the TIPE 2023 People Track. Next up, I'd like to introduce Christina Rebel-Moyer, who is the co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Wikifactory. Christina will be presenting findings from an EU research program on increasing diversity in manufacturing. So I'm very interested to hear the findings of this report.
I think that's the wrong Christina now on the...
Oh, two Christinas at the same time. Christina, if you could turn off your camera, please. Thank you. Okay, let's get the right Christina on stage. As I said, I'm very looking forward to hearing the findings from this next report. And if you do have any questions throughout, please put them in the Q&A chat on the right-hand side of your screen. So please welcome to the stage, Christina.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Christina. Hi. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
And how nice of a coincidence that the previous speaker was also called Christina for the chance of listening in briefly, and really great stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, I'm Chief Growth Officer and co-founder at Wikifactory. I'm going to go straight ahead and start presenting.
Great.
Embed, share screen, fantastic, managing window. Here we go. I think it should be the right screen now. Let's start. So I think it's a really great time to be discussing increasing diversity in manufacturing. What even this conference has done to push the envelope is spectacular. So it's fantastic to be presenting some of our key findings. In terms of context as to why we started this research, Wikifactory was first inspired by the fact that there were key enabling technologies worldwide that were driving innovation towards smarter data-driven manufacturing, otherwise, as we know, known as Industry 4.0. But we're very curious as to what could we do to democratize that access? How can we provide an end-to-end platform for design to production that is enabling wider participation of SMEs and startups that otherwise don't have the capabilities of investing like larger companies. So we built an end-to-end online system where you can, on the one hand, share, iterate, prototype, and also manufacture. So we've got the cloud PDM to host your projects, your CAD files, your documentation, all aspects of PDM management. But that interfaces directly with the manufacturing marketplace so that you can have in one space the ability to get from product idea to market. And we've grown this community using Wikifactory worldwide to over 150,000 designers and engineers around the world, working on over 10,000 projects on a very broad range of topics. So whether drones, robotics, biotech, agritech, you name it. And it's clear that, and I'm very proud that because originally the co-founders came together wanting to power this next generation of innovators that were, our hypotheses were that they're driving products that altogether are part of the future that we would like to see. They're moving the dial in terms of trying to change things from an SDG perspective, how to bring about a more sustainable future. And over 60% of our projects is aligned with an SDG. Here you can see the range of the types of projects that we kind of cover. This is a little bit, so we have open and private innovation happening on Wikifactory. We were first inspired by GitHub to become a GitHub for hardware and for product design. So we have thousands of projects that actually work in the open to contribute to grassroots kind of movements. So we do have a foot in the door in this kind of grassroots community worldwide. We support Wikifactory to the Fab Lab network with our repositories. We're in these kind of networks. So it just made a whole ton of sense to join Critical Making and several academic partners. We've got ZSI, we've got TU Berlin, who coincidentally was just speaking prior, VTT, Global Innovation Gathering, which is a network of makerspaces that are trying to do social impact. and then Wikifactory as a platform to host us. And the framework that Critical Making was trying to pursue was, how can we empower more inclusion and openness in manufacturing? Can we develop a framework for responsible research and investment? How can we learn from the grassroots movement of the makers around the world to drive participative action, whether in terms of gender, education, or openness? One of the first things that they went about doing was actually mapping some of these key inspirational stories from the field. And I particularly like these 3 stories. I'll be sharing some links to these resources into the chat, so you can actually just delve into this beautiful rabbit hole of inspiration. I have to say, having in the past been a chief community officer and been involved in growing the community, it's just so wonderful to actually been given the excuse to hear more of their gender stories from the community. How, for example, in the case of Gabriela, with her makerspace, she's actively developing an allyship. So Gabriela Agostini, during COVID, developed a really great grassroots movement in developing shields and face masks and different supplies on the ground. But she didn't stop there. After COVID, she realized that she was her network was very good at organizing with local partners as allies to actually realize solutions with rapid prototyping to local needs. Uma Reddy, in herself, she was quite a renowned engineer, pushing the envelope in science, in space innovation in India, and she allied herself and created a network called Emerge, helping women in tech and now also in making, so that they can bring about new products to market. And how can she use her voice when she wasn't typically in the AEM space, but she sees the utility of smart manufacturing to roll about new products. So she uses her voice to create allyships to involve the new generation of female Indian engineers in product innovation. Christina Katwa, the same in Kenya. She
Christina, could I just interrupt 1 second? It looks like the slides aren't progressing at the moment, so we're not up to where you are on your screen.
Oh, what a shame. Thank you. How about now? If I can you see this?
Let's see. It's still showing the same at the moment. Could you? Oh, okay. There's movement.
Apologies for that.
No worries. There you go. That's on the right one. Oh, okay.
I'm going to unshare. Oh, apologies for that.
Okay.
Window. Let's start again. Are you seeing a keynote slide right now? Inspirational stories about gender inclusive making?
That's the one, yeah.
And if I press play, do you see it in full screen?
It's still just on the slides.
Okay, it might be that it's at the point of pressing play that the issue is at. Then what I'll do is, to not waste more time, is I'm going to hide presenter notes, and I am just actually going to do this in slightly larger view.
Great. Thank you very much.
No problem. So I hope this would suffice for now. Is this okay, Laura?
That's perfect. We can see that. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Apologies for that. I'm not sure. So I'll send a link to these cases of inspirational women to wrap up on Christine. So she's Gigs is involved in a sprawling, amazing network of maker spaces in Africa. And the particular case of Christine I find very inspiring, because it was at the point where she wanted to develop a new product, and it was the friction that she was getting at the hardware supply markets that urged her to go visit a safe space in a maker space. And what Critical Making has found is that there's a very particular role that maker spaces are having in the grassroots to welcome women, to welcome people who otherwise feel threatened or not welcomed in the engineering space. But not only in terms of like a culture, a welcoming culture, but actually a safety aspect where, you know, thanks to the makerspace, she was able to get hardware without having to feel insecure or as a woman in the hardware markets. should be able to actually have the tools for hardware and product innovation in the makerspace that was safe and allowed her to grow, which I think is really beautiful. Key in one of the pillars of critical making was education, and there's a huge world of opportunity in terms of really leveraging, let's say, thematic problem areas, let's say water filtration, and actually tackling through STEM not just the teaching of product innovation or AM or rapid prototyping for that matter, but actually thematic areas in this sense. And this is where I was very happy to support projects like these, because here on Wikifactory, we were able to, I'm going to show you. So this is a project of critical making on Wikifactory. If it decides to load, of course, when on presentation, it takes a little bit long. And I'm able to, because we are CAD agnostic, because we want to bring down the barriers of participation, the project is able to actually, whether in solid part or step, we are CAD agnostic, so we allow for viewing of over 30 CAD formats. So that there's no limit, but this project is able to empower this youth that they're working on directly with the CAD file. Oops, let me get the perspective right. There's no limit to actually inspect, to discuss the actual project. You can see that this is an assembly, so you can see the parts. We can explode it. The point being that we are at a point where accessibility from a tech point of view can actually bring down the barriers of participation, in effect. So how can we augment the learning experience with CAD embedded so that they can discuss and understand what they're working at here, in effect. But back to the presentation. But this was one of the solutions that they developed on a mentorship program. I really like the frame of the mentorship program, because in this direct action, the hopes were to like, okay, here we want young product innovators to bring about new product ideas. What would be critical making from an accelerator or a product innovation challenge? What would be the framework or the values that we want to impart, or from a due diligence point of view, what is it that we would observe? And I quite like these 4 phrases that they instilled with participants, like make things that make sense, share how you make, include ecosystem services, integrate local knowledge, and build for continuity. But it was off the back of this mentorship program that they developed a framework, the critical making framework. So what is critical making? And they've I'll be sharing the link to critical making, because they've developed a whole bunch of tools and resources and research papers that back this. But critical making from the point of view of, on the one hand, impactful products, reflexive, joyful and meaningful, social and diverse, local and connected and open. And to give some flavor of what this means in practice, I'm going to be showing you some projects that we feel fit this framework. On the one hand, for example, we've got Poise in Rwanda. It was led by a Fab Lab connected with a local organization that was working with female health. And they found, and this is just a beautiful example, because with 3D printing, we can have well, what you see here is there's different menstrual cup sizes, as we know. And this is a kit for someone to be able to, with the different mold parts, actually generate the right type of size mold to their needs, and actually through medical grade silicone mold in a very DIY but accessible way, develop menstrual cups. Now, the interesting thing is that the allyship here, the Fab Lab with the local organization, was using making as a vehicle to discuss aspects of female health. So here, making was the vehicle to encompass slightly more difficult questions. And we've seen the same. For example, critical making, we're doing a project with women in Sudan that were developing alcohol sanitizer. And here, the key issue was actually more in the community outreach and awareness on how alcohol had a functional use, and women brewers working with the local chemists, the sensitivity around them using alcohol, in doing the community awareness of that utility, that it had a practical use, it wasn't to inebriate yourself, was a very key aspect to actually enable the making. In this case, it was just hand sanitizers, but I find it very inspiring when we use, when reality is a lot more complex, and the cultural aspects of developing anything sometimes might be the hardest of work. And actually involving the community or the beneficiaries at that stage is just absolutely crucial. I wanted to highlight this project from Barcelona because I do think it's just it was meaning to be an educational kit, but it's the kind of thing that I can see targeted to teenagers. So they were building a kit where they could, together with trinkets, teach girls or boys alike how they can make and how they can use 3D printing for product innovation. But in itself, the design is gender neutral, it's playful. You can see that where the intent is heading here. We've got the case of Sopra Sotto Milan. This is our kind of like Montessori-like furniture. What we find is that engaging with women around the world, like say in the case of how Uma Reddy developed her Emerge space and her makerspace network, aspects of flexibility is very important. So Sopra Sotto had seen the issue was that there was increasing use of multi-use spaces for in the city of Milan for multiple uses, whether a library, sometimes for workshops, making, and they were lacking a way to actually create pop-up childcare. And she was a designer. She knew of laser cutting, so she developed a whole design kit of pop-up furniture that a multi-space could actually produce to roll out childcare areas that could then be popped down to allow for flexibility of uses of space, so that indeed women could participate in their product in some of their workshops because such a safe space for the children was possible. Now, it's not just about gender. Inclusivity is also about different groups. And for example, from a disability point of view, and it's been really refreshing to see how indeed there's been hackathons, workshops, communities around the world actually working together with cohort groups. They're using design thinking to define the problems co-creatively. So whether like actually teaching 3D printing to the blind, how do we develop a 3D printing course for the blind to actually like understanding their real problems. So in the case of induction hobs, like their capabilities of cooking, they need to have better awareness of you know, what how the state of their cooking is. So having augmented speaking induction hobs to things like, for example, how can we adapt board games like Rummy Cub or chess through to something more medical, for example, this pill dispenser that is smart and has an app, and so a full gamut of different solutions. But the point being that each one of them work together with the beneficiary group as an ally to realize that product innovation that brings their problem at the core. And it's exciting because with these groups would then work with those cohorts in the rapid iterative process to bring about something that actually would work for them. Other ways I've seen how more women have been involved or groups been involved in manufacturing or in product innovation is through direct action, through challenges. When we take thematic engineering and design innovation scopes, I find that we potentially have a chance of drawing a wider base of women into AM. We launch challenges and support partners in launching challenges on Wikifactory. For example, in the case of GrowCab, Marcela was developing an open source benchtop plant growth cabinet. as you can see. And she was a winner of the TFF challenge, and she's a product innovator in her own right. Do I think she would have found a route to become awarded from the AM space? Maybe not yet, because her passion is ag tech. And you actually approach them through the ag tech space in this case. So thematic challenges, I think, is a way of actually bringing people more into the fold. Because from what we do see, product innovators, female product innovators, are interested in the why as much as in the what or how. The why they're innovating is absolutely key. Last but not least, because I don't think I have much time, I wanted to give you a view of how things are changing. So on Wikifactory, we draw traffic from to people that come to our community, people who will come to our marketplace, our manufacturing marketplace. So we actually are at a luxury of being able to see what is the percentage female participation in things that are more high intent, like online 3D quotes, CNC machining, that are more, let's say, on the actual professional company productivity space. And we do see that only 11% of those that are making those searches are female. But it's so nice, at least, to see that those that are related to audience are a bit broader. They're about learning, say, for example, what are the advantages of 3D printing? How can I start learning about 3D printing? That we see a big difference of 37% female. And we've been running these campaigns for a few years now. And to see that there's a growing interest in learning is I think, I'm so relieved, because then it means that if we are able to nurture that interest and encourage this entrepreneurially around the world, then maybe we can move that dial, where in a few years it is more like 40-50% of people engaged in manufacturing orders or professional activity related to AM is female. And I do think that the makerspace, with the critical making research, makerspace is the locus that we can use to encourage that participation of women, and challenges can be a vehicle for that participation and through incentivized campaigns. So thank you so much for listening to me today, and I would love to hear for your questions if I have some remaining time. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. That was great. I actually have some questions myself there. Just on that very last stat that you mentioned then, just about how people are coming to you and the kind of searches people are making, and I found that really interesting about the ones that female audiences are looking more into. Do you think it's important that we maybe kind of change the language then around our industry and maybe like reframe it in order to encourage more diverse people to come into the industry, if this is the kind of questions that people are asking?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So it's true that the keywords are functional. It's whether they actually are engaged in that intent of, I need an online CNC quote. So there's just a practical language that we're mentioning is the truth. But the point is, we're all competing. Anyone that's in the manufacturing on-demand space is competing for 4% of the market that wanting to buy right now. Yeah. And the truth is that there is a lot of the market that are still learning. And I would encourage that we do develop learning materials. It's very easy to automatically go technical, and start talking about ISO standards and GD&T specifications to get a part made. But how can we actually offer the learning resources where if there's at the point of a technical term, could that link to a reference as to that explains the ISO standard in greater detail? This kind of resourceful user paths that give people nuggets and breadcrumbs to go into rabbit holes the moment that they don't understand something is actually what made markets in other contexts. I do think our sector still is requiring trust for those who know how to do on-demand manufacturing. It's only a small batch, and there's still those that still don't understand, or still are distrustful. Ooh, can I really get my parts made? Can I engage online with manufacturers? Can I really, with trust? And hence, whether women or male for that matter, there is an opportunity to help them with that knowledge, so that, you know, a technical term doesn't throw them off.
Yeah. And just very quickly on another topic you brought up as well earlier on in your presentation, just this idea that making can really be used as this tool to address some really challenging questions, maybe some topics that people are not comfortable really addressing, that sort of thing. I just think that's super important. And when you also said that Wikifactory hosts some of these themed challenges as well to really draw people in, is there anywhere that people can go and look for those so that maybe they can get involved in those challenges?
Yeah, great. So if you're interested in hosting, right now, we don't have one active, but I'm currently working on a program for this year with potentials like, for example, the European Space Agency. I really would love to push this. So if people are interested in driving challenges, whether locally or they've got a hackathon or inside their company in an open innovation context, it's something that it would be a pleasure to support with. That said, I will send you a link of all of our community projects, the open source projects, so that people can explore more in terms of that learning resources that we have. And I'm sending my email.
Great.
In effect. The last link is linked directly to our featured, but there's a whole rabbit hole. You can see the range of different initiatives. Obviously, everything that's private source that uses our cloud PDM is not visible, and it's protected. But because we had this root in the grassroots, it's just amazing to see that this community continues to share openly, that wants to engage the broader community in their work, to basically have a greater impact quicker, in effect.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Christina, again for your presentation and for answering those questions there.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Take care.
Thank you.